SBJ Factor is presented by Allied Sports, a full-service agency built to lead modern marketers in the shift from sponsor to storyteller. Find out how at alliedsports.com.
Welcome to SBJ Factor presented by Allied Sports. I'm Ross Nethery, and I'm joined by Ilana Kloss, former #1 doubles player in the world in tennis, U.S. Open doubles champion in 1976, and you won a lot of other titles, especially that year. I think that was probably one of your biggest years.
Yes,
big year. Ilana's a member of both the National and International Jewish Sports Halls of Fame, was named Sports Businesswoman of the Year by the Warsaw Sports Marketing Center. She's part of the ownership groups of the LA Dodgers and Angel City Football Club, is a board member of the PWHL, the newly formed Women's Professional Hockey League that will be launching before too long. She's CEO of Billie Jean King Enterprises and, of course, of interest to Sports Business Journal. She was honored as a member of SBJ's 2011 class of Game Changers. There's a lot more to the bio, but we can't take up the whole podcast with that. Thank you for being here with us.
It's great to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. For iFactor, we like to kind of run the gamut of a person's life. And starting way back in South Africa, Talk a little bit about your youth, growing up, how it made you into the person that you are today.
Yeah, well, as you said, I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa. I got into tennis through my parents. They both loved to play, and tennis in the apartheid years actually was a very popular sport for white South Africans. And used to go to the club every weekend with my parents from the age of about 3 or 4, and used to drag a racket and hit against the wall. But, you know, at a very young age, I had good hand-eye and I had a passion for the sport. I was very, very lucky that in those days, the South African Championships was one of the major stops on the World Tennis Tour. And the very best players in the world would come to South Africa in April and play. And I was a ball girl. And I got to see the very best players in the world. And, you know, big believer, if you can see it, you can be it. And was really lucky. Billie Jean King had come to South Africa that in 1966. I was a ball girl. Loved the way she played, served and volleyed, worked a lot of her matches. And I was actually hitting tennis balls with my dad on an outside court. Billie Jean walked by, she stopped, she hit a few balls with me. She said to my dad, you know, your daughter has a lot of talent. Make sure she pursues it, and if I can help in any way, I will. So she put me in touch with her coach. She got me sponsored by Wilson, and you know, that day I decided I was going to be a professional tennis player. Tennis was not open. There was no professional tennis yet, but it's just amazing the impact that one human being can have on another person. And so, you know, I think for me, as I transitioned out of playing professional tennis, I think it's just so critical to give back and inspire others and make sure that, we stand on the shoulders of people who came before us and that we do the same for future generations.
What did you learn from tennis that has helped you both in the following athletic career, but also in your, after sports career?
Yeah, so I think for me, I think the most important thing, actually, a lot of the lessons I learned were actually off the court, and it was building relationships. And I don't know if that started with my dad, who was in sales. He sold hardware and would travel with a van and samples in those days, going to different stores. He'd be out on the road all week, and then he'd come home on the weekend. But the importance of relationships, and that people really do business with you or do things with you because they like you. And I think for me, I was mentored by Billie Jean and obviously my parents. And, you just learn that people, if they like you, they will try to help you. And because I was skilled as a professional tennis player, I had access to unbelievable people, CEOs, leaders of companies, politicians. And so I built incredible relationships. And when I finished playing, those relationships have served me to this day. So I just think that that probably was the most important lesson that I learned. It's the people you meet that make a huge difference in your life.
I think that's a great lesson, and your dad being in sales obviously would have helped. It seems like a lot of the young players who come up today it takes them some time before they can start to understand the importance of that.
Yeah, it's very different, in the olden days. When I started playing, you didn't have the money to have a support system to travel with you. So, you didn't travel with a coach, you didn't travel with a physio, you didn't have a parent. So the people on the tour were your friends. You practiced with them, you learned from them. Nowadays, because there's so much money, which is great, because that was our dream, but what it has done is it's really much more isolated. So every player has their own team around them, and they don't interact or build the relationships as much as we had to. And I think that's probably that's too bad, because I think you become a much better person in society when you get to connect with other people.
So what would you think were the key decisions in your early career, both in sports and then in business?
Well, I think for me, actually having the courage to stop playing. So I had a wonderful career. Was ranked as high as 19 in the world in singles. I was the number 1 in the world in doubles in 1976. As you mentioned, had a great South African partner, Linky Boshoff, who carried me, I'd say. But we were great together. I knew what she was going to do. She knew what I was going to do, and we traveled the world together. And when she retired, she decided to go back to South Africa and go to university. I really was not enjoying playing, and I did not go to university. There were no scholarships, or scholarships had just started when I was professional in the early 70s. And so, it was a scary time, because tennis was all I knew, and I was making a decent living, but I really wasn't enjoying it. If I won a match, I'd eat because I was happy, and if I lost a match, I'd eat because I was depressed. And, in tennis, you really are out there alone. In doubles, yes, you have a partner, but there's only one winner every week. In team sports, you get to share that victory. And also, if you don't win, at least, you're not alone. So just making the decision to actually stop playing professionally and go into the business side, because I loved the sport of tennis. I knew I didn't want to coach. But, change is very scary. But the thing that I learned is change for me was great. And sometimes not changing is a much greater risk. So really getting off the court and, into the business side was probably a tough decision, but for sure the right decision for me.
What gave you the courage to make that decision?
But there's a common theme in my life, and it is Billie Jean King. And, she would always say, you want to be happy at what you're doing. And if you're not happy and you don't have joy, then something's wrong. And I was not having joy. And so she suggested, at the time, she had just retired from playing professionally, and she had taken over as commissioner of World Team Tennis. And she said to me, look, I'm looking for somebody who has got relationships with the players and can help us recruit. And if you're interested, at least it'll be a slow exit from the tour. So I started doing that in the mid-'80s, and then I got into sales. And quite shortly after that, I was running the league and was commissioner for over 20 years. We sold the league 6 years ago, but it was amazing because I just was doing something that I loved, and you cannot beat that, to be able to go to work and do something you're passionate about.
Relationships must have been very important in building that business and your continuing career. What else did you find was important as a leader and as someone who had to rely on a team of people
Yeah.
working with them to get things done.
I think most importantly is listening, and also talking to people outside of your close circle, because that's where you really get your best ideas. And I think too, as a CEO, for me, it's important to understand the culture and the people below you, because usually leaders don't know very much about the subdominant group who are working below them, and yet the subdominant group have to know everything about the leader because they have to navigate. And as a woman CEO, and trying to sell teams and sponsorships, there were not very many women in the field, and so I learned how to navigate, ask questions, use my relationships. Playing professional tennis was a huge help. It's like people really respect athletes, and I think they respect people being at the top of their game in anything. But because I was a professional athlete, I got unbelievable access. And so I think that served me incredibly well, being able to get in the door. Once I got in the door, because I was passionate about what I was selling, and because of the message of World Team Tennis, which was equality, whether you had a little boy or a little girl, wouldn't you want the same for your kids? And that, when you came to a World Team Tennis match, everybody was included. So it was an easy sell for me. But getting in the door, you have to be able to get in the door, and people have to want to hear your story. So I think it was navigating that. But again, the thing about Billie Jean King, her relationships are over a lifetime. Mm-hmm. She taught us, if someone says no, they just don't have enough information. She also taught us never, ever to turn down an interview, because the media are your friends and they tell your story. It's much different now, where people have social media and they can tell their own story, but there's nothing like somebody else telling your story. And so, the media, I think, helped us and respected us because we respected that they had a job to do. So I think it was, just thinking about others, because actually when you give, you receive a lot. But I was very lucky. I had a great mentor.
Where do you get your best ideas? In the shower, like some of the rest of us?
Actually, I get my best ideas when I'm running. It's funny, I gave up playing professional tennis and I took up jogging. I wouldn't call it running, but I hated to run as a kid. My dad used to take me to this field at school at 6 in the morning and shine the car lights on the field and would make me run, because I had great hand-eye, but I was not quick in tennis. And that's why I did better in doubles. You need that explosive speed in singles. But I took up running. I watched the New York Marathon in 1980, the end of it, and I saw these people finishing in like 4 hours, and they weren't in great shape. And I said, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it. The next year I ran the New York Marathon, and running changed my life. It gave me a sense of that I could do it on my own. It didn't matter about an opponent. I didn't need luck. It was all me. But I think for me now, that's where I get my best ideas. If I go out and run, at least I'm not gasping for air like I was in the beginning. But that's where most of my clarity of thought comes.
Do you alternate tennis and running these days? How does that work?
I absolutely do. They're very different. I now only play tennis for enjoyment. I don't want to compete because I've been there, done that. And it's a great workout. I just work out, and I have the privilege of hitting tennis balls with Billie Jean a couple of times a week. And then the running I do more consistently. The other thing too, you can do it anywhere in the world. But for me, and then also, I think Billie Jean is such a visionary. And we've also got a great team of people who now work at Billie Jean King Enterprises. When we sold World Team Tennis, we started Billie Jean King Enterprises, and we do a lot of brand work around Billie and her legacy. We do some sports consulting, helping companies, and then we also invest in women's sports. So it's been a great evolution, and I just never stop learning from Billie Jean.
How do you get away from it all?
That's hard, because Billie Jean is my wife, and she's not done yet, and she never stops. I mean, she has this incredible drive to make the world a better place. So she's never stops thinking about how to make things better. So for me, going for a run, and then I think shutting down usually is probably going on a vacation on a cruise, where I'm kind of away from a device and really changing the environment. But I feel really blessed to be doing something that I love. And now, you mentioned earlier on, we're investors in the LA Dodgers. We started this Women's Professional Hockey League. We're doing the Billie Jean King Cup, a JV with the ITF. So it's just so great to have capital and support, financial support. We've always had relationship capital, but in order to make things happen, you need financial capital. And at this stage of our life, to have that through Mark Walter and TWG, the Walter Group, it's been incredible. And not because, of course, we want to be successful and of course we want to do well financially, but it's the impact that we have an opportunity to make for thousands of young girls who are going to follow in our footsteps. And with the Professional Women's Hockey League starting in January, just think of all the players, but not only the players, all the job opportunities that it's going to create. So, for us, it's really about how can we make a long-lasting difference? And you can do good and do well. There's no question about it.
I want to end up with a couple of quick hitters here. One is to ask you to finish this sentence. The sports industry needs to do a better job of
putting women in leadership positions. We're here today at the Sports Business Journal Dealmakers Conference, and I looked out in the audience, and very, very few women. I looked at the agenda, very few women, and it's not on purpose. And so we have to do a better job of getting into the C-suite, and we have to make sure that people look at women as people who can run things. And, there's some amazing women here this week. You look at Sheila Johnson, I know Michelle Kang, you've got the people from Monarch, you've got Julie Oman from Angel City. So they're out there. You might have to look harder, but we have to keep pushing women forward, because I think you never know where you're going to get a great idea from. And, half the world are women. So we should, we're losing so many resources if we don't engage them.
I usually ask this question, best career advice for young people getting into the sports industry. I want to modify it and ask you, as father of a daughter, best career advice for young women who want to succeed in the sports industry.
So I think find a mentor. Growing up for me, yes, Billie was, but in business, a lot of men helped me incredibly. Ed Willard, who was the CEO of DuPont, could not have taught me more. So as a young woman, I would say find a mentor. As a woman who's a CEO, help identify women that you can help. And then, most of the time you get your first job from a relationship, from people you know. So use relationships and build that, and find a mentor, because I think, we all can help. We get calls all the time, and anytime I can help connect somebody, I'm thrilled to do it. So again, it does get back to relationships. So have your daughter call me. I'll help
I
her.
absolutely will. I want to kind of end up
Yeah.
maybe at a 30,000 foot view. You've touched on this a lot about the changes, particularly with women in sports from the time you started and had limited opportunities, limited award money at the end of tournaments compared to today. So there's obviously been a huge amount of progress, but how would you assess that and kind of where we still need to get as a society?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there have been progress. The individual sports like tennis and golf were far ahead. I think Title IX, which is 50 years old, in 1972 it was passed, that hugely helped women's sports with scholarships in college. And that's where you saw at the Atlanta Games was like the first evolution of the impact of Title IX with all the US teams winning. So I think that's been a huge help. I think now the next evolution is really professional leagues where women can do what they love, have a place to play, but most important, earn a living, doing what they love and not have to have 2 or 3 jobs. And that is still evolving. Even with the hockey league, we have a 7-year CBA, but players have to increase, we've got to increase how they get paid, bring in more revenue. So that's important. But I think, as I think about it, probably 2 things that are hugely important. Media rights and data. I think the great thing about data and betting is it doesn't really matter, man, woman, doesn't matter what the sport is, ponies, dogs. I think there's huge revenue in that space, and I think that's going to help. And then the other thing which I find incredibly inspiring and is a great sign is that we are now getting billionaires investing in women's sports. And, even in men's sports, it takes enthusiasm, investment, and time. And if you look at MLS, and if it weren't for Phil Anschutz and Lamar Hunt, who spent billions to get, men's soccer where it is today, it wouldn't be there. So I encourage everybody, if you invest in women's sports, give it the same investment, enthusiasm, and time to mature, and you will get the results. But I think the future's bright, and just couldn't be more excited to have lived in the generation where we had to build it, and now to see it start to come to fruition.
Well, Ilana Kloss, you've been a trailblazer and a pioneer who has made a lot of this change happen. So we really appreciate it, and thank you so much for joining us on SBJ iFactor.
Thanks for having me, and we'll hope that there'll be $1 billion sale of a women's professional team soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
SBJ iFactor is presented by Allied Sports, a full-service agency built to lead modern marketers in the shift from sponsor to storyteller. Find out how at alliedsports.com.